Welcome everybody. Let me share just a couple of words about myself. I spent my entire professional life trying to help large, complex, traditional organizations with thousands or hundreds of thousands of people to become not just more efficient, but also more human. That's what I've been trying to do. And of course, I couldn't miss on one side sociocracy and on the other side holacracy. So everything you will hear about in this presentation is just based on my experience with sociocracy and with holacracy. And the disclaimer being, I do not claim to be probably an expert on either one of them. And there are a number of conversations already about sociocracy and holacracy. But I wanted to share this content, again, based on my learnings, trying to sustain a bit deeper conversation. And you will see in a moment what I mean with that. I collaborate with a number of organizations. And again, as I said, I'm particularly interested in exploring. And I like the topic that this year, because I think we really believe we really need bridges, and I will try to suggest ideas for doing exactly that. So Marx is dead, God is dead, and I'm not doing good either. This sentence has been attributed to Woody Allen, but that's exactly what our organizations could say if we look at the numbers. And the numbers are really surprising. Our organizations, the life expectancy is going down very quickly. 75% of the Standard and Poor 500 will be disappearing by 2025. The return on assets, an indicator of the value that organizations are creating for their shareholders, is 1/4 of what it was in 1965 in the entire US economy. Job safety is gone. The average net new job creation rate for organizations older than 1 year, so the only exception being startups, has been negative for 2 decades. And if you look at the management hierarchy, Peter Drucker many years ago thought that that would have been disappearing, but actually it's not. It grew 90%. And we are paying a toll of $9 trillion in the entire economy due to management layers, due to organizational bureaucracy. And the last point I wanted to share, the last number, is employee engagement. As you probably all know, only 15% of employees are engaged, are emotionally connected to what their organizations, their employers are trying to do. The number is even lower in some countries, such as in Italy, where I live. So in a nutshell, I think it's clear that our way of doing business is broken. It has been broken for many years, and it's even more visible right now. And as you know, we have on one side sociocracy, and on the other side, holacracy. And very often, the way we look at them is like in this picture. 2 fighters, 2 challengers. For those that are a bit into holacracy and sociocracy, actually it's clear that there are a number of points that are in common, a long list of points that are in common. TED recently published an article about this. And the list includes at least the points on the right. Both of them are into purpose, could be called purpose, could be called aims, but at the end it's about believing that organizations have something to bring in the world, not just making money, not just profit. Both of them are into distributing power to circles. Both of them believe that there is autonomy. At the end, you can do everything you want unless somewhere in the organization, through power distribution, there is a policy saying that you cannot. And this amount of policy, this amount of structure, this amount of hierarchy should be light. We shouldn't spend too much time into it. There is a need for effectiveness, a need for speed, a need for concreteness. And in both cases, we are trying to see strategy as a continuous ongoing experimentation, exploration, dynamic steering, not as a 3 years long Gantt or plan. We have double linking, we have circles, we are transparent, and in a sense, hierarchy is gone. Not hierarchy, at least in the sense of individuals. We have hierarchies of domains and specificities, but not of individuals. Both of them, again, are using consent to make decisions. So the list is very long. And in my experience, when we look at holacracy versus sociocracy, we have two sides. Some people believe that they are exactly the same. They are brothers, they're cousins. Some others believe they are the opposite of the other. So really my goal with this presentation, hopefully with this discussion, because I know some of the people in this room and I know how much they know about this topic, is to bring the attention to a few more questions. Of course, the first question is about the practices. That's interesting, but that's easy to me. What I really wanted to bring attention to is not just the practices, but what lies behind the practices, and specifically the view of men and organizations that holacracy and sociocracy are bringing into the world. But also if there is any preference in terms of change processes, so how to adopt, how to introduce holacracy or sociocracy into an organization, and if we can build bridges, as I was saying, between them. So is there anything to learn from holacracy if you're practicing sociocracy? I don't see this conversation happening anywhere. My last question for this presentation is really if there is anything that we can learn, not just from sociocracy or from holacracy, but from both of them, in terms of the journey that our organizations, every organization, even more in this time of COVID, of transformation, of crisis, has to go through. So I'm going to explore these 5 questions through 10 differences. And again, I'm very open to get your perspective, so please have a conversation after this. I cannot see the chat, so I hope everything is going well.
The chat is basically talking about wanting to acknowledge that holacracy is a spin-off of sociocracy.
Oh, that's interesting. Brian Robertson wouldn't agree with that. So yeah, let's get into it. Thank you, Dad. So the practices. And I won't start, actually the differences, and I won't start from the practices. My first point is really about what sociocracy and holacracy believe in. So in a sense, the beliefs, and this is true for every organization. Every organization at the end, and every organizational model is a byproduct of the human beings that created it. And the same is true for sociocracy and holacracy. On one side, you have Annenberg, and you have John Bach, and you have Keswick, and you have Ted, and you have many others. On the other side, you have Brian Robertson, holacracy one. So this is my feeling. This is what I understood. What do they believe in? Well, on one side, sociocracy, you have a very deep belief into effectiveness, into equivalence, into transparency, into inclusion, into this idea of connecting things, but to do that in an effective way. And this is rooted into human living systems. the belief that organizations are systems, that the organization are human systems, that the organization are complex adaptive systems that have a purpose, but at the end are based on connection. On the other side, on the holacracy side, the mindset is a bit more rooted into ICT, into technology, into computer science, into algorithms, into rules, because the belief is that human beings also bring dysfunctional behaviors, and that these dysfunctional behaviors can reduce organizational speed and efficiency. That is the ultimate goal. So efficiency comes by neutralizing humanity. I don't know if everybody in the holacracy space would agree with this statement, but this is my experience. So efficiency is there, but it's in a trade-off with humanity. First point, first difference. The second difference that is connected to the first one is what sociocracy and holacracy want to bring into the world. Believing that individuals are naturally looking for self-direction, self-control, self-motivation, accountability, responsibility. In a sense, this is theory Y, to tell it with McGregor. Sociocracy supports deep relationships. It could be at the individual level, could be at the team level, the organizational level, or maybe at the societal level. But still, it's about building relationships. There is lots of care for relationships, for example, in the values, but also in the facilitation approach. On the other side, holacracy somewhat believes that human beings need a nudge to adhere to theory Y. So we need a bit of help to behave. And to me, this sounds a bit like theory X. And under this lens, of course, what holacracy tries to do is to protect the organization from what human beings can do. Political turfs, fiefdoms, hidden agendas, and also our nature to look for freedom, maybe forgetting or hijacking or trying to break the rules. This is very strong in some cultures. Italy is an example again. It is less so probably in other cultures, but the look is quite different to me. The third difference is one that really surprised me, because when you start to notice that the values and the beliefs are different, you become curious about the words. And governance is probably the word. So at the end, sociocracy is a governance system, holacracy is a governance system. But what kind of governance systems are they? Sociocracy, to me, is a governance system for teams to flourish. Yes, towards an organizational mission, but for teams to flourish and contribute. Holacracy is definitely not, and Brian Robertson has been adamant on this. Holacracy is a governance system for the organization, through people, not for the people. And what it means, for example, is that sociocracy is about collaborative decision-making. So decisions are a way, to act together, but also to connect people, to let people mingle, to let people interact, to let people feel each other's. Governance in holacracy means distributing authority. It's very specific. It's just establishing the rules under which everybody can do what he or she wants as long as he or she stays within the limits. That's governance. Everything else is not governance. So even the meaning, the basic word is different. Fourth difference, operations and governance. Here, holacracy again is very, very clear. Tactical activities are not governance. They cannot be, they're not supposed to be in the same meeting. And we use IDM, integrative decision-making, only for governance, only for distributing power. The same is supposed to be true in sociocracy, but based on my experience, operations and policy are along a continuum. At the end, there are some things that you do in operations that are so important, or you want to consider them so important, so that at the end you use consent for them. So at the end, this distinction is not black and white. And that means that probably we are again going towards inclusion, maybe sacrificing a bit the effectiveness or the total clarity that holacracy may have. Moving ahead, difference 5. Again, this is one I never really read about. And it's not philosophical. Who is responsible for action? With different words, both holacracy and sociocracy believes that you can feel tensions, and you have the responsibility to fill the gap, to act on tensions. Sociocracy doesn't call it tensions, but just to use the holacracy lingo. But who has this responsibility? In sociocracy, the circle has the responsibility for action. In holacracy, actually, that's not true. There is no responsibility in the circle. The responsibility is in the individual. And the individual could be the lead link, the individual could be anybody fulfilling a role. But still, the circle hasn't any responsibility, because the circle is a different thing. In holacracy, the circle is a cell of the organization with accountabilities, with domains, but very clearly independent from the human beings that are filling the roles. In sociocracy, the circle is a group of people who collaborate and decide together. That's the meaning of the word. So at the end, again, this nuance is important. And as we will see, it's also implemented into the way we do things. It's not just conceptual. Difference 6, who is doing proposals and who is building the agenda? Again, creating proposals is a way to fill the gap, is a way to react to tensions. While in sociocracy, proposals are made by the circle, and there is a process for it: picture forming, proposal shaping. In holacracy, the proposal is made by the individual, by the member of the circle that felt the tension. And then, of course, the proposal goes through consent, to integration, but still the initial proposal comes from an individual. Even the way agendas are built, at least by default, of course, everything can be changed here, but by default, it's different. The agenda in sociocracy is built usually beforehand by the facilitator and the leader, potentially to work together with the secretary, looking at the backlog. So looking at what has remained unaddressed in previous meetings or at other urgent things. In holacracy, the agenda is usually created in real time, collecting tensions from participants. So you enter into the meeting, you ask everybody to raise tensions, and then you build the agenda with them. Again, in terms of how we manage power, well, or how we distribute power, it's not the same. Difference 7, the role of the leader. And I think this is clear, but let's reflect about it. The leader in sociocracy is somebody that takes care of operations and circle members. With circle members, I don't mean the fit between the human being and the role. I mean the human being, how the human being is feeling, how the human being is doing, not just how well is contributing to the accountabilities. In holacracy, the lead link is a very powerful, for me, role. It has responsibility for priorities, for strategies, for metrics, for allocating resources, people into the circle. It's not the same. That means that the flavor, the taste you have in a meeting in sociocracy is a bit more empathetic, horizontal. There is only coordination from the leader. There are shared values. Facilitation is a bit softer. In Holacracy, actually, the lead link is the one inheriting the purpose, the accountability, and the domain from the higher circle. So at the end, if you're not going to split them, in other roles, he's the guy or she's the lady holding these parts. Again, it's a very powerful default behavior, at least. Difference 8, how we are going to allocate work. Here, again, the leader is assigned or elected in sociocracy, and any other role is selected by the circle. But in every case, whether that's another role or whether that's the leader, the selection happens by consent by the receiving circle. As you know, the leader belongs to two circles, just the delegate. So you still need consent, whatever you decide to do about the leader. In Holacracy, the lead link is usually assigned by the higher circle, and the lead link is the one assigning people to operational roles. So there are elected roles, the lead link, the rep link, the secretary, and the facilitator. But for the other roles, it's the lead link associating people to roles. So to me, this is quite a lot top down. It's not really sociocratic. You can change it, of course, again, as anything else, but that's the default. And going at towards the end of the differences, even the validation of objections is different. In one case, every objection is valid, sociocracy, and the responsibility for integrating objections falls on the circle. On the other side, the Holacracy, the facilitator tests objections through a checklist. So you have a checklist, it's an algorithm, you have to go through the rules and you have to check. And even when you are amending a proposal, it's the objector that makes the amended proposal, and it's the proposer that has to say something and to accept or not the amended proposal. And when you think about that, even the meaning of objections is different. To sociocracy, objections is something that goes beyond the range of tolerance. And the range of tolerance is subjective. It's my range of tolerance. Yes, you can point to the conversation towards the aim of the circle, but at the end, I have my range of tolerance. Because the goal is making a decision together and reinforcing relationships. In Holacracy, that's not really the point. Objections are a negative impact on the ability of the circle to move towards the purpose. So at the end, it's not a matter of subjective thinking or feelings or needs. It's trying to use a checklist to verify if an objection goes against the aim. Again, the reality could let us do one or the other, regardless of you are in sociocracy or Holacracy, but that's basically the starting point. And going towards my last difference. Well, there are two things that sociocracy has and that Holacracy hasn't, at least at the best of my understanding and experience. The first one is a honest attention to creating a safe space, to letting individuals be whole, to say that with Lalou, to try to understand and to help individuals to satisfy their needs. So at the end, we are really interested in sociocracy to hear the voice and to let this voice come up. That's not really the point in Holacracy. The point in Holacracy is trying to be efficient, is trying to process tension as a Ferrari, as Brian Robertson would say. And the second one is the ownership. And I know that Graham Boyd is going to talk about it this afternoon, but the point is the mission circle is a bridge towards the world. Other stakeholders, competitors, customers, owners, workers, experts, whatever. It's a bridge into the world and for the world to contribute to decision making. The anchor circle is protecting purpose in holacracy. There is no specific mechanism for including others. So going to the end of this presentation, everybody's talking about the practices. And yes, to me, the practices are different. You can decide if this difference is big for you, it's not. But for me, it's important to point this out. What quite nobody is really putting attention to is the second level, is the beliefs, is the worldview behind those practices. There is algorithmic in one case, holacracy. There is much, much more humane in on the other side, sociocracy. And as Ted wrote online, of course, this means that different people are probably attracted by holacracy and sociocracy. But for me, this is not a way, just a way to attract people. It's also a way to decide what you want to give, what you want to bring into the world. The third point is the process. The process for adopting holacracy or sociocracy in real organizations. In my experience, it's very difficult to break down holacracy into pieces, into small practices. You have to sign a constitution. In sociocracy, it's very easy. You can take rounds, you can take consent, you can take the meeting format. At the end, you have very small pieces that you can start experimenting with. Maybe this is not enough, maybe this is not the end of it, or maybe it is. But at the end, the learning curve is much easier in this case for me. So again, also this is an important difference. Going to the end, so is there anything that we should learn from holacracy? I really believe so. When I met sociocracy, I was really confused and a bit pissed off by the lack of clarity between governance and operations. And I feel that being a bit more intentional and clear would increase effectiveness without damaging equivalence. A second thought is about using software. Okay, Google Drive could be a starting point, but having a software that can really store the policies, that can make the organization more transparent, that can make it easier for facilitators and secretary to work, for me, it's a big value. The third point is discussion about how to bring sociocracy within organizations. I didn't see much. There is a bit in Ted's and Jerry's book, but I think this is missing. Fourth point is trying to talk to the for-profit world. This is something I'm trying to do. This is something I like to do, but I see this missing. It's a bit too much given history for intentional communities, no-profit, social enterprises. I believe the for-profit world would dramatically benefit from sociocracy or dynamic governance. And the fifth point and last point is really trying to connect, trying to build the bridges between sociocracy and other movements, other frameworks, other ideas, such as lean, cybernetics, living organizations, but also agile, steward ownership, non-violent communication. I think many of us are coming from other fields and trying to be clear about the point of contact could increase the attractiveness, but also could reinforce the method. So going to my last presentation, I really don't believe that whatever you're going to use, holacracy, sociocracy, equacy, teleology, or any other approach, any framework would be perfect for a real organization. Actually, I don't believe this is the goal. I don't believe there is any governance framework that is best. Because every organization has a different purpose, a different culture, different objectives, a different context. So for me, this comparison is not meant to say this one is better, that one is better, or this is the difference, but to raise the attention on the differences, to be intentional, to help individual organizations to see the difference and to reflect on themselves and their specific context. And also to take responsibility for a journey that is an ongoing journey. There is no way you're going to adapt everything in one day or in 1 week or in 1 month. It's an ongoing journey. And it should be also an holistic journey for me. That's why I try to build this human organization map. It's a 2 years work that has kept evolving with 3 different areas: organization, teams, individuals, and many organizational dimensions. The idea is really to look at frameworks, to look at case studies, and to go deeper, to push organizations to think about themselves and to explore. You can start exploring from one organizational dimension. It could be transparency, it could be coordination, it could be purpose. It's very difficult for traditional organizations to take it all. And the point is really that being adaptive, the only way to learn is to look for evolutionary seeds, try them, probably fail, learn, and trying again. To me, this is really the most important lesson that I'm taking from Sociocracy in comparison to Holacracy. And that's really it for me. So I don't know how we are with time, but again, this is just my point of view. So I'm sure lots of points are missing, and you have many other ideas. So happy to hear.
And I can't wait to ask you the questions that were put in the chat. So, Francois is asking, based on your brilliant analysis. Yes, you want to say something? Say something?
No. I'm happy to see Francois.
Based on your brilliant analysis, Emanuele, would you still classify holacracy as teal? And if it, or if it is, don't we need to redefine teal?
Francois, I don't want to get into this conversation because for me, teal is not a framework. It's just 3 ideas: important, cool, helpful. It's not a framework. So evolutionary, yes, of course. Self-management, yes, of course. But at the end, what do we mean by self-management? What do we mean by evolutionary? Are the examples in Laroux's work all teal? I'm not sure. So at the end, for me, these are 3 dimensions, important dimensions. I don't think they're all dimensions that we want to consider, or the level of detail that we want to consider in real organizations. But that's really my taste. So at the end, I'm not able to answer this question if you want, because I don't think it's good enough.
All right, I have at least 4 more questions here, so just for you to track. What are your thoughts on integrating best of all worlds, like from Sociocracy, Holacracy, Agile, classical hierarchical organizations, and hold on, I'm trying to track the question. What are your thoughts on integrating best of all worlds in order to create a universal operating system for companies?
Universal? Sorry, universal?
Operating system.
Yeah, but universal is the word,
yeah.
Sorry?
Yes, that's the word, yes.
Okay, that's a very good question. Again, I don't think there is anything as universal, meaning that if organizations are complex adaptive systems, I don't think with this richness, with this complexity, you can define anything that works for every organization. So universal, for me, it's not the point. The point in the human organization map is exactly to avoid that. So look at the landscape and decide where you want to start and start moving. So what I really care about is for organizations to start moving, because many of them are so far from holacracy principles or sociocracy principles that they don't see even the differences. For them, this is just, utopia. So for me, the first goal is, okay, get convinced this is possible, get convinced there are ways to do it, get convinced you have to try. I don't believe there is a universal answer, or I didn't know about it.
Thank you. In both cases, how to implement these kinds of governance processes when the organizational laws, especially in the nonprofit sector, are so vertical. Yeah, I guess I want to make this a little broader even, because you were, you know, I've heard that from you before. Like, why is sociocracy not being made more appealing for the for-profit world, or for hierarchical spaces in general, where that is expected? And at the same time, you also comment on the ownership question and so on. So how do you see, say a few words about that?
So for me, the starting point for a cooperative or for a for-profit organization is totally different. The language is different, the expectations are different. Again, to say it with Lalou or with Claire Graves better, if you are into an orange mindset, you don't care about equivalence. You care about, you know, effectiveness, you care about efficiency, you care about succeeding. That's good. So we can tell these organizations that sociocracy can help them to succeed, can help them to be more effective, can help them to be more efficient, and also more inclusive. Probably if this conversation goes on with an intentional community, they don't care much about, you know, effectiveness. They care about different things. So for me, it's just stressing more one argument over the other without losing the other. So that's why I'm a bit, sad in seeing this conversation missing, because I don't think the distance is so big. It's just the language, the expectation, the context, the mindset that is different. And again, I believe we need to build the bridges. So when doing a training for for-profit organizations, you need to use a different language, different examples, because, you know, the behaviors are different. It really struck me in a training that I ran. One lady said the idea of time in the for-profit and the not-for-profit world is totally different. We have lots of time in the not-for-profit world. You don't have time into the for-profit world. Everybody is in a hurry, is running. I never thought about that. So this is very easy, but very deep. So I believe we need to do more. And ownership, I see more organizations going towards steward ownership, for-purpose enterprises, so ways to include others or everybody into ownership. And again, they don't know how to do it. Maybe you have the legal frameworks, but you don't know about the organizational frameworks. So sociocracy, even in the for-profit world, is the counterpart to the legal frameworks that we are building. So again, please, more of it.
So here's almost like a summary question. So from your opinion, what can sociocracy learn from holacracy? And what can holacracy learn from sociocracy? You said some things, but maybe you want to talk about that.
I said something about what the sociocracy to me can learn from holacracy. On the other side, I find it a bit difficult to answer for holacracy, because that's exactly what pushed me a bit away from holacracy. Many of the things that I wrote in this presentation are very difficult to share with the holacratic world, because they don't see them. Because when you say the leader takes care about people, the answer is, yeah, the lead link as well. Meaning the lead link is the one that is taking care about the way individuals fulfill their accountabilities. To me, it's not the same. So at the end, the mindset is subtly different, and explaining the flavor of inclusion and equivalence that you have, or the psychological safety that you have in sociocracy, to somebody that never experienced that, to me is very difficult. This is the thing that I will bring into holacracy. But for me, it's difficult. Oh, marketing. Yes. That's what I meant with, okay, communicating, messaging, and so on. I think Ted is doing a lot of this. There are other people in this space, but yes, we need to be visible to the for-profit world. Otherwise, there's nobody to bring.
Yes, I'll take one more here. That is writing. In my experience, holacracy appeals faster or more in traditional orange organizations, which I guess makes sense since the underlying logic is so similar. However, it's exactly the strength of sociocracy that it introduces a more holistic human perspective that is needed to change the unproductive behaviors in traditional organizations. Is that also your experience?
Sorry, let me read it again because it appeals faster, more traditional organization. I'm not sure if it appeals. So in terms of messages, yes. At the end, who doesn't want to be effective, doesn't want to be quick, doesn't want to react, to have order, clarity, everybody. On the other side, just ask your CEO to sign a constitution and tell me what happens afterwards. So at the end, the assumption is still very deep for me. So since holacracy is monolithic, it's difficult to take one practice without breaking the package. So if you have to convince the board or the CEO to give up power, that's a steep learning curve. So in a sense, yes, it may be resonating more with orange organizations, but for me, it doesn't make it easier. And that's why many large organizations went into holacracy and then got out or tweaked it to a softer, let's say approach.